Well, hello everyone. We're back, and this time we have a very different kind of episode of Kvetching with Adam and Jarrod. We have a guest from Georgia, so we have two Southerners on. Jarrod, of course, is from North Carolina, and our guest, who's going to introduce himself in a moment, is from Georgia. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm kind of the odd man out here. But our guest, Gary Grossman, is a friend of mine. I've known him for several years. And in fact, we traveled through Israel together a few years back. Gary is a professor or a retired professor at the University of Georgia. And I'll let him get into all that in a moment. But he is a scientist. He's the first scientist that we're going to have on this show. But he's also an artist. He does music. He writes his own music and plays the ukulele, and hopefully he will play the ukulele for us tonight. And also he writes poetry and various other literary projects. So let's open it up to Jarrod, who wants to say a few words first.
Well, I just wanted to jump in with one thing, Adam, that I'm very thrilled that you're finally recognizing that political science is not a science. Since he's the first scientist that we're having
I
on the
should
show.
have said is our first natural scientist.
Okay. So you're still going with the whole science thing.
Yeah.
I like to think of the other side as unnatural science.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do study human nature, so I guess we are natural scientists too, but
You're not a scientist.
okay.
Your humanities masquerading as something that's not quite what it is.
I have this same argument with my jogging buddy, who's a historian, who keeps claiming that because he does some work with numbers, he's a scientist. And then I ask him, well, what experiments do you do? So that usually ends our discussion.
I'm a historian. We are not scientists. Okay, we might be in the social sciences, but the social sciences are not science. And people usually lump us in with humanities rather than social science. Anyway, so we make no claim to being scientists, even if we do use numbers on occasion.
Well, it's always refreshing to meet an honest man.
Yeah.
All right, Gary.
So I'm actually not used to introducing myself, so I may stumble a bit here.
That's why we don't want to do it. You know, we end up stumbling, trying to get all the details right about our guests, and we figured why not just, dump it on them to do it.
Okay, all right. Well, the pressure's on, I see. I am an animal ecologist, and for 42 years, I was a faculty member at the University of Georgia in the Warnell School of Forest Resources. And well, we've changed the name so many times. Now it's the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources. And so I was in the natural resource part of the school. We were never departmentalized, so we were all one big faculty, and everyone from forest economists to people like me who studied fishes and salamanders, and people who cut down trees, literally, wildlife people. So we were kind of the conservation and natural resource school in the state of Georgia. My job was always mostly research. I taught a wide variety of courses, but really never more than 2 a year. The last 10 years I spent teaching a non-majors class that I developed in natural history of Georgia. And it was a class that met both the university's environmental literacy requirement as well as the basic biological science requirement. It was really a fun class to teach because it was mostly non-science majors, and it was just gratifying to get that I never knew this stuff kind of response, literally every lecture. So what else can I tell you about myself? I'm one of those people that hates to be bored, and I happen to like doing creative things. So one of the things that I did a lot more frequently than I do now is play the ukulele. And I also became interested in my last kind of 15 years in developing innovative ways to teach ecology, obviously to try to retain or better retain the students' interests in this non-majors class. And as a consequence, I wrote a series of songs and played them on this album, and they're all ecology songs. And the way I use them is when I would reach a point in the lecture where I wanted to talk about a particular concept or a particular species, I would play the song I had written for that. And I didn't usually play it myself. I recorded all these on YouTube. So I had a YouTube channel, and then I would just click on the YouTube link and the video would play. And the video had the words to the songs. And the idea was that if they memorized the lyrics, then they would know everything they needed to know about that concept or species for the exam. I retired in fall of 2022. 42 years is a long enough career for anybody, I will say. Although we can perhaps talk about changes in the university, and I will kind of I don't know, lamishly admit that I saw and worked during the good old days, and I really kind of feel sorry for faculty today. And in fact, in the last couple of years I was working, I had reached the point where I wasn't sure I wanted to take on PhD students because just of not even talking about anti-Semitic things. I mean, I'm trying to think if I even had any Jewish PhD students. I had 30 something graduate students, so there must have been somebody that was Jewish in there. But being in animal ecology, it's not a field that attracts a lot of Jewish folk. Unlike,
hold on, why would that be?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's the old joke which you've probably heard about the first Jewish president, and it's a woman. And so her mother's there at the inauguration, sitting next to the Secretary of State, and he says, "Oh, you must be very proud." And the mom goes, she points up at the president and says, "You see her? You see her? Her brother's a doctor." And so I didn't when Jewish people seem to be interested in biology, they tend to go into the medical field rather than field biology. I don't know. You could talk about the urban concentration of Jews, and so
Is there a large Jewish student body at the University of Georgia?
University of Georgia is like the university in Georgia. I mean, it was the first state university founded in 1785. And so there are like sixth generation Georgians. How many of them are Jewish? I really couldn't say. I don't collect data like that. There's a pretty active Hillel. There's like everywhere, there's a very active Chabad. I was and am currently the AEN, the Academic Engagement Network, faculty advisor. There isn't any kind of student chapter. And I've tried to engage some of the Jewish groups like Dogs for Israel and Hillel without much success,
Did you
quite
say
frankly.
Dogs for Israel?
Yeah. The bulldog is our
Okay.
is our mascot. So
For a minute there, that didn't sound quite right.
No,
Yeah,
actually, when
well-
I taught at Ohio University, the group they founded while I was there. Actually, I was their advisor. Bobcats for Israel.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty standard group name. So
You ought to start
and,
Singing for Israel, YSU.
yeah, so and it's DAWGS. So
Okay, right. Well,
um so I don't really I just don't have a figure for you, Jared. I know that Emory has being in Atlanta has probably has on a percentage basis a larger population.
Now that they
Uh,
got rid of the quotas, which existed in the dental school until the 1970s, from what I've heard.
Yeah, actually, I in 2022 I did this AEN webinar on deep fried anti-Semitism. Uh, I called it, and that guy Perry, I'm trying to remember the guy who wrote the book on anti-Semitism in the Emory Dental School. Uh, he was one of the speakers, and it was his experience was horrific, and he ended up having to leave. I mean, basically he couldn't pass courses because he was Jewish. I mean, they just had decided that they were not going to pass him.
Huh.
And of course, there was a quota, but it was very low.
This is why I'm a rabid anti-dentite to this day, and I
makes you
should
want to
always
say
do.
they should have their own schools.
They really do deserve their own schools. Yeah.
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 So Gary, what is the situation like in Athens, or particularly at your campus right now, given everything that's going on with the war?
Right. So we have an SJP chapter.
Mhm.
It's impossible apparently to find out who the faculty sponsor is. I
Why
know a
is that
number of
impossible?
people. What?
Why is that impossible?
I don't know. All I know is that everybody that's tried to find out has not been able to find out. You would think it's
They're a very clever and secretive organization. They try to present themselves as decentralized, that they don't take their cues from the national SJP org, which I don't think is
Register as a
really.
student organization with the administration. They have to have a faculty sponsor.
yeah, yeah, and it should be public information, but they're all about covering their faces so nobody can identify them, which when they're on campus, I believe is actually illegal. Georgia has one of those, anti-masking laws. But there's simply no enforcement of these things. It's against, well, let me start at the beginning. It's a fairly small chapter, but of course, in the last year or so, it has increased. Their activities historically were mostly just setting up a counter demonstration during Israel Week on campus. But it wasn't serious disruption. I mean, they didn't try to get in people's faces. They just were kind of on the fringes doing their chants. And it wasn't excuse me, river to the sea stuff. It was just we want our land or something, fairly innocuous.
Which
If you
goes from
can,
the river to the sea. I
what?
mean, which goes from the river to the sea.
Well, they never were specific, but and Palestinian flags and everybody wearing a keffiyeh around their neck, and
Mhm.
but in the last year, I don't know if they've grown. I suspect they have, and they have started having demonstrations. Um, Hillel had a demonstration where we walked through campus holding Israeli flags and stuff, and there was no counter demonstration. But now they're having pretty regular demonstrations on their own. The strategy seems to be leave them alone and everyone will forget about them. But they also have started coming to we're a fused city and county government. And so they have started going to the commission meetings whenever there's a possibility, to sign up and say something. And they've been, highly critical because the commission will not pass a motion calling for an immediate ceasefire, which of course, is totally inappropriate for local government to do.
And irrelevant, I might add.
But they
Yeah,
also,
it's all performance. I mean, their
right,
whole group is uh,
but they're mad
basically
that
performance art.
they're mad that the national government isn't going to listen to them. So are able to go to the local governments to air out their anger.
No,
Well,
it's not just that. They want to create an intimidating climate. That's the same thing that all the student groups who try to pass BDS resolutions, that virtually every campus, they know it's going to fail. The administration will never sign off on it, but they want to intimidate the Jews on campus, and that's the
right.
way to do it.
So, I mean, I'm an alumnus of Cal and of UC Davis, and
Oh, you went to Berkeley? You went to Berkeley?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I went to Berkeley for my PhD.
Ah, well, yeah, but you're a young man, right?
I graduated in 2008.
Okay, well, I graduated in 1975.
Wow.
So
you hung out in People's Park and chained yourself to a tree and dropped down the cigarette.
no, I didn't do that. That was kind of, most of that was over by that point, and People's Park was, in fact, People's Park. And it was before it was full of homeless people and kind of declared a health hazard and stuff.
Still,
But I read about what goes on at Cal, and of course Judith Butler is, and I can't remember the other faculty member, are the founders of BDS. So
yeah, Hatem Batsian, that's his name, Hatem Batsian.
Yeah. So, I would not, I mean, I feel sad for Jewish students at Cal because I can't imagine what it would be like to be an undergrad in that kind of environment. And especially if you were in humanities and, your professors had Palestinian flags in their offices and it just seems like a horrible situation. Davis, I don't think is quite bad.
Davis is pretty bad too, though.
But yeah, it is bad.
But now at Berkeley, there's that Professor Ron Hassner who's going to be sleeping in his office. I don't know if you.
He's in Jewish studies, and he's like the first person ever in Jewish studies at Berkeley to speak out. Most of them are in bed with with SJP and company.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone, but most of them. And he's actually declared that he's teaching only online, and he's staying in his office 24/7 until the chancellor does something about anti-Semitism on campus.
No, I didn't know that. I
We'd
just
love to have
read.
him on our show. So Ron, if you're listening.
He's not listening. He didn't answer my email.
Well,
Ron Hassner, we want you on our show. And if you're in your office 24/7, all you have to do is turn on your webcam.
Mm-hmm.
Tablet just had a piece about the law school, which one of the clubs there, refused to have any Zionist
speakers. Started at 9 and then it went up to dozens.
Mm-hmm.
The article that I read, which involved Chermaninsky, the dean of the law school. I mean, it was kind of an interview article. It didn't say, at least in the law school, that there were that many. I mean, but one is too many. So
GSEN, we put out a statement on that when it happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not, I mean, obviously, like, the Muslim law club would probably, do that, say no Zionists are allowed to speak here, but like whatever, how many Zionists are running to speak to at the Muslim law club?
Well, it is entirely legal, apparently, for clubs to do that, even though they're public organizations. And that was interesting.
How do you determine who's a Zionist? That's where the problem comes in.
Well, I think they're only talking about people who actually have identified themselves as Zionists. But like all of these things, I don't want to use the word enforcement, but how they will determine who can speak and who can't is where the hard issues are.
Well, wait a sec. So, but what does it mean to present oneself as a Zionist? If I walk around with a Star of David around my neck, does that make me a Zionist?
Well, no, Jarrod, it's obvious you're a Zionist. Everyone knows you are a Zionist.
Yeah.
No, if I'm some random guy, let's say law professor who does not really get involved.
But that's not what they're talking about. I mean, they're talking about invited speakers. And so, they're going to ask you if you're a Zionist.
Okay, but that's what I mean. They're raising the question. So they're subjecting speakers to a litmus test. And
but it's legal. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm just saying, based on what I read in this article by the law school
David
dean.
Bernstein told us as well, it sounds like it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure AEN got involved in this,
I don't
and
think it's legal in North Carolina. Our government just passed a law about compelled political speech, which I guarantee you could be stretched to refer to this type of situation. So I don't think they'd be able to get away with it here
yeah.
in North Carolina.
I mean, like I said, let me make it perfectly clear, rather than Nixon-esque, that I'm not defending it at all. I'm just saying that at least under California law, which I think is also true under federal law, like Title IX, et cetera, is that clubs can ban certain groups, just like Hillel can ban Hamas members from speaking.
Yeah, Hillel actually bans people that support BDS.
Right.
I don't know if they ban people who support BDS.
The umbrella group
Well,
has a
speakers now.
stipulation that they will not work with any organizations that support BDS.
Absolutely, but I don't know if that applies to individuals. If they're going to, invite a Jew to speak, I don't think they're going to ask them, what's your stance on BDS? I don't think they will raise the question.
But can they? Legally, they can.
You don't, I mean, I would put money on exactly the opposite opinion. I'd say that's the first thing they're going to ask.
Hmm.
But how it applies to like members or whatever, I think that's unclear. I'm sympathetic to kind of your point of view in the sense that I don't understand how this dodges anti-discrimination laws, but the answer that's given is they claim that Zionism is a political philosophy and, ignore the fact that the vast majority of Jews support the state of Israel.
Yeah, or at the very least, if they're compelled to answer a question, do you support the state of Israel, or will you denounce the state of Israel? Very few Jews would actually denounce the state of Israel, even if they spend very little of their time thinking about Israel, or really, seeing Israel as an important part of their identity. They still accept it as an element of Jewish identity.
Yeah, except for people under 25 or
yeah, okay. I'm obviously the radical left, yeah, but I'm just saying the average Jew.
Yeah. Well, it's something like 80%, but there is, when you break it down by age, there's almost there is an inverse correlation between age and support of Israel. So it's almost all young people who don't support the existence of Israel.
Yeah, which of course is a big problem, and one that's not.
It is. It is. And I suspect that, well, I don't know if we should leave that alone or not, but there are a lot of people that were born to Jewish parents that do not practice, but all of a sudden they've become, like JVP. They've become they're utilizing their Jewish heritage, in my view, in a hypocritic way to claim, oh, well, we're Jews that don't support the existence of Israel.
Yeah, they're the as a Jew Jews. Yeah. But on the other hand, I don't, practice Judaism in any meaningful sort of way, but Zionism is an important component of my Jewish identity. I don't go to shul unless I'm the speaker. I certainly would never keep kosher under any circumstances. I once walked by the Chabad house drinking a smoothie on Yom Kippur. That wasn't deliberate. It's not my fault they erected their house. They built themselves next door to the YMCA, and I went for a workout, and I got my
third time you told this story on this show.
I what?
You've told this story 3 times already on this show.
Oh, really? Have I been consistent at least with details?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've belonged to a synagogue for 30 years, and one of the big differences for someone who grew up in New York and California was in moving to a fairly small southern town, was that I became other for the first time in my life.
Exactly. I know what you're talking
and of course, Athens, I mean, our temple, we have one temple. It's the only temple really in North Georgia. And it's reform, although they keep the temple kosher because it is the only temple. But it was founded in the 1880s. So that tells you, how long ago Jews came to town. that there were significant enough numbers to form a shul.
That's not that old as far as the South goes. Ours was 1875, I think, but you go to Charleston, it's 1730. You go to Savannah, it's also around 1730.
Right, right. Well, those are two, and St. Augustine as well. But once you get off the coast, I'll say that it's quite old for a town of
Yeah.
its size.
Yeah. Well, the
So
Jewish communities in places in the South, they're generally old. I mean, obviously, I've had an influx in some of these places in the last 50 years or so, but most of the Jewish community are descended from the German Jews who came over as traders in the 1800s, especially if it's a port town. So they're very Southern, the Jews who live
right,
because they've been part of the Southern environment for so many centuries. But they're also very small, and every town in the South had their small town Jew, right? Sorry, yeah, the Jew. They had
right.
the local guy who settled here and opened up a dry goods store, and he was known
Right.
as
Do you know that book, The Jew Store?
Oh no, I haven't read that one.
Okay, well, that's written by a granddaughter of the person who opened the dry goods store in a small southern town in Kentucky. It's quite an interesting read. So, I mean, we have belonged basically because we did feel other. We belonged for 30 years, and the community, the temple has been defaced a couple times
Really?
in that 30-year period.
Oh, not since October 7th or
No. And after October 7th, maybe it was even earlier, maybe it was when the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting started. We always have a policeman, in front of the synagogue. But there hasn't been a lot of overt kind of anti-Semitism in the town. Now, a lot of people that are Jewish have lost friends in the town. I say that, but there certainly is a split in the Jewish community, and the kind of left-wing social justice warriors that exist in the town, and I've lost usually of my own action. I've unfriended them on Facebook and I don't associate with them. Quite a few of my left-wing friends
are they Jews or
and
non-Jews?
non-Jews. But I suppose the most salient is the woman who was the maid of honor in my oldest daughter's wedding, who has gone full JVP and went to Birthright, even though the only time she'd been in a synagogue was for my daughter's bat mitzvah, which, okay, that's what Birthright's for, right? I mean, people who were not, who many of whom did not have a Jewish upbringing, and this is to take them to Israel to see what it's like. But yeah, so she's getting married this summer, and she disinvited me from the wedding because of my statements, and of course my family said and wrote me a very nasty letter accusing me of all sorts of, she has really worked herself up into a fantasy. And of course, my kids, I have two adult children, and my wife all read that letter and these accusations and said, if she thinks we're coming to her wedding, she's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was probably the most significant loss of a friendship. And I held that girl in my arms as a baby. But
And your politics really aren't that far different. Like you consider yourself more on the left, right?
well, I did until October 7th, I guess. In terms of Israel, I was always in favor of a two-state solution, and still am.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
know
still an
how.
apologist for genocide. It doesn't matter. You're a settler colonialist if you
Yeah,
support
yeah, yeah.
because the
So
left says 1948 is not legitimate.
yeah, but I don't even like to joke about those things because we all know, having been through Schusterman, it's a bunch of malarkey. So that Israel doesn't fit the definition of a settler colonialist state, and it's so far off
Yeah.
that only crazy people can go around, claiming that it does. So,
Yet we have all these people in Jewish studies who claim they are experts on the subject, arguing that it is a settler colonialist state.
well, it's because they view everything as settler colonialism. But, when you look at the facts, I mean, Israel was not settled as a country to send resources back to the main country, as a country where the language of the main country was spoken. In fact, very much the opposite. There was a reversion to biblical Hebrew. I mean, these are indisputable facts. So, I mean, that's what you brought up is the most disturbing aspect of this anti-Semitism, right? Is that it's independent of the facts. It's lizard brain stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be saying Heil Hitler. It's hitting the same uh, parts of the brain that sort of activity hit.
Well, they have a way of cherry picking, certain small facts, just as those who wrote the Protocols of the Elders of Zion could. I mean, the Jews were disproportionately represented in communist parties in the early 20th century, which doesn't mean that communism was a Jewish conspiracy. But I mean, they'll say, hey, most of the first Zionists who came were, white Europeans. Well, yeah, that is true on the surface, but you have to look at the entire context and see why that's a problematic statement
Right,
in of
right.
itself. Or they'll say, I read Herzl's diary, and he used the word, colonial. We're going to settle and colonize the land, and it's like, well, the way he's using the word colonize is not the way you think,
Right,
or at least it's not the way it's used today. So you actually
right.
look at the context there.
Yeah, so I kind of became involved in Jewish activism, I guess, when BDS started. And actually not when BDS started, but when I became aware of it and what it was doing on campus. And again, at University of Georgia, I'm sure we have some individual faculty who support BDS, but it's nothing like, we don't have, when Jewish speakers come, there's not an attempt to disrupt. I will say that the administration, when SJP attempts to disrupt Israel Week, for example, it's a violation of the code of conduct of the university, but there's no attempt to find out who these students are and discipline them.
So if
And
there's no
that's a
problem,
national problem.
if there's no problem on your campus, how did you get involved?
Well, I'm, I'm a post-World War II baby. So anybody who is in my generation and is Jewish had thoughts about what would I have done in 1930s Germany. So my activism had come out of that. I perceived that BDS was anti-Semitic. I became involved with, I guess JNF was the first official organization, but I know I was involved with somebody before then, because I wanted to not say to my kids, I sat and watched the whole process happen.
Yeah.
In natural sciences, there's not a lot of kind of BDS, river to the sea disruption kind of stuff. And I think that in general, if that occurred, the people that did it would be shunned because it's so antithetical to scientific inquiry.
Right.
Um,
So if you're in JNF, could you find out what happened to all the trees I planted when I was a kid? I kept quarters every single week, from first to sixth grade, and I have yet to see a tree.
After I find my bar mitzvah tree, I'll go look for yours. So
Adam went to get a tree. I'm not putting money in that box until I see a tree. Did you steal
well,
that from your, did you steal that from your elementary school?
No, I didn't. No.
I mean, the really sad thing about the whole tree planting campaign is that they didn't plant native trees.
Mm.
And so the Galilee is full of trees that are from all sorts of different places, including eucalyptus from Australia.
What's the
Uh,
tree that's cited in the Hamas charter? What was that tree called again?
I don't know. I mean,
As
So
that we're
we're all
supposed
about
to be
olive
hiding
trees.
behind?
the Lebanon flag has a cedar, and there is a cedar that's been widely planted in the United States, that's Cedrus deodora, that comes from the Levant.
No, there's a tree that we're supposed to be that they're supposed to find us behind, like behind every rock and tree. It actually cites the name of the tree.
I don't know. I didn't memorize the Hamas charter.
Mm.
And of course, are we talking about the 77 charter or the
88. You mean 88?
The Garkod.
right? Is it 87 then? Not 70.
Yeah, it's 88.
Yeah, the Garkad tree.
Oh.
What tree?
The Garkad, Gharkad, only the Garkad tree.
Well, that's Arabic, and
Yeah.
you know, if you know anything about scientific names and common names are a horror story because the same name can apply to 10 different trees. So you have to go with the genus and species.
Wikipedia pulls up Lycium, Lycium, if I type in Garkad tree.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know what tree that is.
As far as the Lebanon goes, cedars of Lebanon, like, I mean, that shows up in the Bible constantly. It's
Right,
it's a
right.
constant biblical reference.
And and probably even Adam as well, if you walk around your town or if your town has a forester and you ask if those trees are planted in your town, they almost certainly are.
Hmm.
Cedrus deodora is not it's the most common one we have here. It's not the cedar of Lebanon, but it is a cedar of Lebanon.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess planting the wrong tree could be construed as a form of
Imperialism.
colonialism. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that's kind of, and KKL, you know, is supposedly I mean, I know they're aware of it, but they're not exactly cutting down exotic trees and replanting. My understanding now is the only trees they plant are native trees.
So you've been able to be an activist on your campus without receiving any significant pushback from other faculty, administrators, or students?
Yeah, but you know, you'd have to put activism in quotes. I mean, more of my activism has been on the internet.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, I'm not an
Yeah,
activist on campus because there's nothing to be an activist against.
right. So that's pretty much the situation here. I will say that uh, I when I did my webinar, which was held in town, so it was both live and Zoomed live. I invited all sorts of administrators, including the head of DEI. No one showed up in person. And according to our records, because it was run through AEN and they have very good webmasters, only one person was plugged in on Zoom because I had all the names of people.
Mm.
And that person never asked a question, and never turned her camera on. So, you know, for all we know, she just turned it on and went and you know, did administrative stuff. So kind of the sad thing, and I think that's brought about by the quiescence on campus, is that you know, Hillel didn't come. A lot of the Jewish students, I think, view both Chabad and Hillel really as a social outlet and not, you know, not as any kind of political group. I know.
But they're not political groups, and that's the point. They're not the Jewish equivalent of SJP. They're not the
Right,
Muslim Student Association or the Arab Student Association.
right, but at least Hillel represents the Jewish students. So there are times when it needs to get involved. And I will say that the new head does that, that he'll call up the president and they'll meet.
So you actually have a Hillel director on your campus?
We do.
Okay, so
Not on
we don't.
campus.
I'm just one of the advisors to Hillel.
Yeah, not on campus. It's off campus. And they
But
own
it's
a
still
building.
exclusive to your university.
Yes,
See, we're under the umbrella of like 7 or 8 UNC schools.
like Hillel of South Carolina.
Well, North Carolina, but
Or
yeah,
North
but it's like we're under the umbrella of the same Hillel director for Greensboro, for us, and but 5 other campuses.
Chapel Hill and
Chapel Hill has their own because
Ah.
they have a big enough student body, and I'm assuming NC State does as well. So
We
it's
don't
the
even have a
lesser
Hillel.
campuses.
We don't even have a Hillel.
Well, ours is small, but it's very vibrant. We've got a good president. But again, it's not a political organization, and when stuff does heat up, they're ill-equipped to be able to handle it because they're not trained to do it. They don't go there for that. It's not like SJP, which is a militant org, and that's their sole purpose for existing.
Right, but I still when the head of Hillel and the other, there's a couple assistant directors and other personnel, when nobody attended, my AEN webinar or I don't know what to call it. It wasn't a workshop, it was just a bunch of speakers. When no one comes to that, that's making a statement. And when they don't encourage their students to attend, it's also making a statement because this is anti-Semitism in the South, focusing on Georgia. And how can you be Jewish and apolitical about that? But you're just kind of confirming my earlier statement that the students in general view these as social outlets only.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not against Israel. Most of them have gone on birthright, and they'll walk around with their Stars of David. And I remember once, this is a number of years ago, I went to go check out the Hillel booth because I was their advisor, and I kept saying Hillel is not a Zionist militant Zionist organization. They're very open, and then we're a cultural group. And then of course they had an IDF document on display, and I said, okay.
Well, I think the thing about Hillel is that these chapters are really dependent upon who the head is.
Yeah, but they do have to follow the national party line.
Right.
The limits to what they can do.
But I think there's a fair amount of leeway in that in terms of activity.
Yeah. But again, as Adam mentioned earlier, if a local chapter were to try to partner with an openly supportive of BDS group, there would be a problem.
Well, of course not. But they partner with Dogs for Israel, for example.
Yeah. And I assume Dogs for Israel is more of a politically oriented group than Hillel is.
Right. I mean, its stated goal is to support Israel.
Yeah.
It's Zionist.
So Gary, tell us more about your art.
It's getting, in my little sunroom here, it's getting a little dark. So hang on a second. And sorry, Jarrod, you're going to have to use your editing skills here.
Or I could tell a good story.
I'm going to turn the light on.
Adam, do you want to read a poem? There once was a Jew called Woke, who was not much more than a joke. He joined JVP to set Muslims free and ended up serving the folk.
Oh, did you just write that just now?
No. I tried to publish it a few years ago. Nobody wanted to publish it. I think it's pretty damn good.
All right.
And for those of you who are Beatles fans, her name was McGill. She was called to the hill, and now everyone refers to her as Nazi.
Well,
Rocky Raccoon.
I'll have to read my poem.
You have a poem?
Podcast. Yes, I wrote a poem about Batamti mustard.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Have you do remember that?
You told me about it. I don't know if I heard it.
That was a great poem, you got to admit.
Did you publish it?
No, I didn't.
Why didn't you submit it anymore?
No.
There must be a mustard organization out there that would be looking for.
Well, there is actually a mustard museum in Milwaukee. I never really thought about it. Maybe I should send it to them.
Send it to France. I mean, they take their mustard very seriously, as one of my colleagues was telling me just the other day.
Are you making mustard these days, Adam?
No, but I
He's
wrote
writing poems about it.
a poem about Batamti mustard.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I'll read it after you read some of your poetry.
Okay.
Hold on, Adam, you
Okay.
don't actually make mustard?
I
It's
never
easy
did
to
one.
it's easy to make.
I
I
don't need
used
to make it. I've got Batamti.
well,
Gary,
you
don't you make
can
whiskey?
branch out.
Gary, don't you make whiskey in your bathtub too? I could have sworn I saw a Facebook post about that at some point.
Not whiskey. What I make is infused alcohol.
And we've
So
got a good
I,
southerner right here. Yeah,
I make gin, three different types of gin.
yeah.
And what it is just taking neutral spirits and then infusing it with various spices and flavors. And gin actually legally can be called gin if it's not distilled.
Huh.
It's called combined gin. And if you go to the gin aisle in your liquor store, you'll see some of these gins will say combined gin, and that means they infuse spices in neutral spirits.
They get away with that with tequila too. I remember going up to the counter with 2 bottles of tequila and saying which one is worse, you know, because I'm kind of cheap for mixed drinks and stuff.
Well, I'm a
And,
teetotaler.
and they said, wait, sorry, what, Adam?
I'm a teetotaler.
But I said, which one's worse? And they said, which tequila is worse? And they said, those are not tequilas. And I said, what do you mean? It says tequila on the bottle. If it doesn't have blue agave in it, then it's not tequila.
Yeah.
And I said, but it says tequila. And they said, no, read it closely, and you'll see that it's you know, they're
Yeah.
taking
So this was something I discovered at the start of COVID, and how to do this. And I made a cherry vishnik that was like what my grandmother, from Russia
Oh,
made.
that's cool.
And we have a big fig tree, so every year, very quickly, we grow tired of eating figs. So I make a fig rosemary cordial.
Vishnik means cherry in Slavic languages, or close. I forget what the exact word is in Russian, but it's something.
Okay. Well, my grandmother called it cherry vishnik, and one year we even went and picked the cherries and then put them in vodka. And 7 years later, at my bar mitzvah, we drank it.
Vishnya. Yeah, Vishnya in Russian.
Okay. And I made kirsch with cherry pits and chocolate cordial. I've made 7 or 8, maybe 10 things. Aquavit, I made 2 different kinds of aquavit. And then I realized I was drinking way too much alcohol. And so pretty much now I make a batch of gin every so often, and I continue to make the fig rosemary cordials.
You know, I should do this. I'm looking for a new hobby, and I don't feel like learning how to cook. So maybe that sounds like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, well, you go to the liquor store and buy 1.5-liter bottles of vodka. And you can find a bunch of recipes on the web. If you want some recipes, I'll send you some of my recipes by email. But since we're both academics, you need to always identify it as Gary's Vishnik or Gary's Kirsch. None of this Jarrod's Kirsch. So.
Okay. Well, a former student of mine actually gave me as a present a bottle of their family's moonshine recipe. And
yeah.
Apparently their mother dissolves their Xanax into it as well, but the bottle I received did not have that. She has since converted to Judaism. She was a classic person from the hills.
Is this all going into our show?
It's a funny story. Hold on. So sorry, what, Adam?
Is this all going into our show?
Why not?
I don't know.
Entertaining, and she graduated 10 years ago. I'm free to talk about her, but she converted to Judaism, and I got an email on it from her out of the blue, like 5 years after she graduated, and she said, "Yes, I'm Jewish now. I am no longer a goy." And I could say she learned all that from my class. I am proud.
She had like the worm in the bottom of the tequila bottle, huh? supposedly sucks up all the alkaloids, and then you
I didn't
eat.
notice any worm in there, but if there was a worm, I'm assuming that it would have just crawled in there at some point in the basement of their place. I don't think I've
Well,
never.
go to your liquor store and ask for the tequila
It's mezcal, or they call it
or
mezcal.
mezcal with a worm. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think
So
you can get it in the States.
Adam, you asked to see art, and I'm a little shy about this turning into the Gary Grossman is an interesting guy show, even though Gary Grossman is a fascinating guy.
Well, otherwise we
Anyway,
can
for
listen to
many
Adam's
years,
mustard poems all day, and we got enough points.
yeah, I can top that with no trouble.
Wait a minute, wait. So is this something that you made, or is this,
Right, right. So
or is this a
I
trophy
carved
that you were
this.
given for something you made?
No, it was two blobs of stone.
Uh-huh.
You must have looked at my website. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
lot of pieces on my website. I carved them all. So for about 10 years, I was a very active stone sculptor. We say carver. Uh, then for about 10 years, I seem to have like hobbies that go in 10-year cycles, except I never completely stop any of them.
Mhm.
So then I started playing the ukulele and writing music. And since retirement, I really haven't been playing the ukulele much at all. And I'm not sure I actually will play for you. But
Well, you
uh,
played it on the bus in Israel.
right, because that was kind of, that was what, 6 years ago, seven
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was the main entertainment on that damn bus.
And in the airport too, I remember. Yeah.
It That's the wonderful thing about the ukulele. You can take it anywhere and amuse yourself and other people.
Hey,
So
Adam, why doesn't he do a theme song for our show? We need an intro. We need
I
music
think
for the intro, and
Jerry should write us a theme song
it
for
doesn't
our.
have to be anything elaborate. It doesn't have to have singing. It just you have to play some klezmer on the ukulele or something like that. And
Something. Yeah.
the horrible thing is I don't like klezmer music.
well, it doesn't have to be klezmer. It could be
Doesn't have to be
Okay.
klezmer. It could be anything really.
Well, I will think about it.
yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
have a
Ukulele.
long
Do something Hawaiian Jewish. Can you do that?
yeah, right. Well, a fascinating kind of etymological thing is aloha and shalom have the same meanings.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
true.
it means peace also.
Hello,
Aloha means
goodbye,
peace.
and peace.
It does
So,
mean peace. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
anyway, then after I retired, really the year before at the start of COVID, um, I had always written poetry and was interested in writing creatively. And I kind of stopped playing. I stopped writing songs and playing the ukulele much, and started writing creatively, and also doing a little bit of art. So this is a piece of my art. I can't draw, so I draw lines. I do these abstract kind of things, which I do.
What's it supposed to be?
It's just a piece of abstract art. So I mean, you could call it a sunset, if you want. Uh, and you could call this an ocean, if you wanted. But abstract art it's called non-objective art, and you're just supposed to take away from it
So
what
I
you
could be an
can.
abstract artist if I wanted to.
Yeah, you could. You could call yourself an abstract artist. Whether I considered you one or not is a different matter.
I did actually make ambient electronic music for probably about a year. I had the software for it. I got all the free sounds and all that.
Okay, an
I was,
EDM for your second career as a club jockey,
yeah,
huh?
well, I mean, it was very mellow, down tempo, ambient. But and I said, like, why can't I? I mean, it's legitimate music. I mean, given the way that people sample things, and as long as it
Sure,
has a beat and it's consistent, who cares if it's not? If it's
sure.
atonal, it doesn't really
I
matter.
wrote a poem.
Okay, Adam, read your poem already, just to get it done.
You want to hear my poem?
Yeah, we can always cut it.
Sure, Adam.
Well.
All right, but it's about Batamti mustard.
Okay, first of all, what is special about Batamti mustard? I don't even
It
know.
tastes great, doesn't it?
I
It's
don't
good.
know. I buy
It's
yellow
okay.
mustard
It's
or
not
Dijon
my
mustard.
favorite. It's
It's
not
my
my favorite
favorite.
mustard.
My favorite, and I title my poem "The Mustard."
Okay.
Hail thee, Batamti mustard! How delightful thy look on my covered shelf, 'tween the Peloponnesian olives in the Morton salt. I shall reach for thy splendid jar and make my supper dainty more. Hail thee, Batamti mustard. And whence thy is dispersed on my corned beef and my bread of rye, I add a dill pickle to the plate. I shall eat my favorite mustard, as I did in bygone days. Hail thee, Batamti mustard. How harmonious it is to taste the mix of mustard seed and vinegar with turmeric and mystery spices. That recipe so lofty I shall never fathom. Hail thee, Batamti mustard. Return thy must into thy fridge, condiment of condiments, thy wait for the morrow to make afresh and renew thy savory accent on my next meal whence I hunger again. Hail thee, Batamti mustard.
Not bad.
It has a very Caesar-esque feel to me, you
I
know.
wrote that myself. That is an Adam Fuller original.
Okay, okay.
Well, I did
even
write
read it to my students.
I did write a song and make a video called Santa Claus Don't Visit the Jew. To the tune of Santa Claus is coming to town.
I actually wrote a screenplay for a Christmas movie called The Jew Who Saved Christmas. Well, I haven't written it yet, but I came up with the idea.
It goes under great ideas I once had.
Shouldn't it be How the Jews Stole Christmas?
No. I want this to be one of these family-friendly blockbusters. So, you know, to become
a Jewish one or a Christian one?
For everyone. I want it to be ecumenical.
We don't have enough of those already?
I want more of them.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, I'll read you a couple of Jewish poems that I've published.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to stop talking.
Gary, you could be honest. What did you think about my poem?
I have a hard time evaluating things, hearing them. I would need to look at it in written form.
I'll have to send
I
it.
would say, you know, for a first try, it's a great poem.
Thank you.
So
now let's listen to your poetry.
Okay, so a lot of my Jewish I don't have a lot of Jewish poems, but mostly they're about my grandmother's cooking, but I'll read this one because it's probably the best Jewish poem that I've written, and it's in my new book, which, oh, that's weird. All right. It's in my new book. All my books are available from Amazon.
Looks like you designed the cover.
I did. I have designed the covers.
Is that supposed to be an ocean?
All my books.
Is that supposed to be an ocean?
Sure.
Awesome.
So this is called The Day I Almost Dropped the Torah.
All right.
Perhaps it was the altitude. Salt Lake City, an unrolled omelet 3,200 feet higher than my backyard, with a March wind that cut like a just-honed fillet knife, trimming up locks. Looking east, the Wasatch Mountains were a string of upside-down sugar cones, with vanilla ice cream dribbling from the peaks. Or maybe it was jet lag, my cells unhappy with a 2-hour time subtraction from Georgia. But yesterday, I came close to dropping a Torah. This trip is for cousin Jessica's bat mitzvah, a rarity in my 21st century a-religious family. Now a right of choice, not obligation. I remain one who practices our faith and have the honor of Chagbah, a reenactment of the prophet Ezra's unrolling the embryonic Holy Torah text for views by the Judean. Not rocket science, but physically taxing. A job of love and respect. Each hand-scribed Torah is wound onto long, top-heavy wooden spindles, 30 pounds more or less. I am now Ezra, unfurling the scroll until the requisite 3 columns of text are viewable. Then levering it up off the bema, I turn towards the tabernacle, lifting the open scroll, 1 spindle in each hand, high over my head for the congregation to see. Suddenly, the right spindle decides that it's Joseph in his multicolored coat, while the left becomes his brothers, acting out the original jealous sin of casting Joseph down into the cistern. And as my control struggles to fly away like the stained glass doves in the sanctuary windows, I grasp that now I'm a true Israelite, metaphorically speaking, wrestling not with God, but with his words. I quickly clench my fingers around the maple handles and lower the scroll with the help of my spotter, the rabbinical intern. Seated, clasping the scroll to my chest, breath returning to normal, my wife begins to dress the Torah and says, "Don't worry, nobody noticed."
Very nice. That word you use, chadba, I've never heard that word before.
I had to look it up, but
Well,
that's
when you raise the Torah.
yeah. I
The
mean,
word chadba?
that's what the rite
Yeah.
is called, of raising the Torah.
Where, yeah,
Chadba. So, okay. Huh, I just tried to Google it and I can't even find it.
I mean, it took a deep dive for me to
Well, Google thinks I want to type Chabad and I misspelled
see,
it.
that shows how rarely you go to shul, Jarrod.
Well, I could tell you the whole ritual, and I could sing the prayer they sing as they open the ark, and I could do all
This
that.
is when you put the Torah back into the ark.
That's
No,
At the end
no,
of the Torah reading.
it's after and you lift the scroll up,
Yeah,
and there have to be 3 columns visible, and you
right.
turn towards the tabernacle. And then, yes, you roll it up, you dress it and put it back in the ark. So this is called Grandma's Strudel. So most of my 5 Jewish poems or whatever, 4 are about food. Typically my grandmother's cooking. I walk up our glassy steps, wet-clothed and red-cheeked, from the cold slap of January 10th, and an after-school snowball fight with the 7th and 8th grade bullies from Addison Avenue, their aim deadly from 2 years of Pony League play. Twisting the knob, I'm caught by an eddy of cinnamon, allspice, prunes, raisins, and shelled walnuts. It is strudel weather, and Grandma is baking. A 4'9" relic from the 19th century, born before fortified cereals and cheap multivitamins, survivor of Ukrainian pogroms and third-class ocean passages, gone these 40 years. All those leaves I've let fall from my family tree, neglect, youthful hubris, early deaths, and more. If only I could remember her recipe.
Very good.
well, if Ezra had thought of adding it to the Torah, then we have it to this day, and we see it every time we did the Chadba ritual.
Here's another one called the leftover kugel. Leftover kugel. Not really noodles. Pesach. A week of remembered sacrifice. Sure, the cellophane wrapper read parv for Passover. Bland and chewy, texture like old camel saddles. Remembered sacrifice. Not for eating plain or even topped with moguls of Parmesan cheese, but drowned in butter, egg, sugar, pineapple, and cinnamon, then baked at 350 in Grandma's rectangular cake pan. It melds into a Pesach kugel to die for. Parva kugel, our people's offering for unleavened dessert. My tongue buds say sweet, umami, a hint of salt, the perfect foil for 7 a.m. dark roast after an evening with 4 cups. Remembered sacrifice, and the sacred act of living in the here and now. This coffee, this kugel.
Very nice.
If I'm going to be the literary scholar for a minute here, it sounds like your poems are trying to express this loss of Judaism that you're trying to reclaim, but are having difficulty reclaiming.
Well, I mean,
Adam is, losing his muscle.
yeah, I mean, I've been very active in our temple, so I and
I mean,
that's,
that's one interpretation, Jarrod. I kind of
yeah.
I think literary scholarship
to-
is mostly bullshit, and people can impose any interpretation they want on
what,
stuff.
Yeah.
what I got out of it was that he's hungry.
Well, I do think that the grandma poems express the loss. My grandmother died when I was 23, and they definitely express the loss that as an adult I didn't really know her.
And in the
And
desert, you're not quite sure what to do with the Torah scrolls, you know, and it is the desert, I will add too, which is no work.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that was kind of, I mean, I go to the gym and I'm strong, but that was I was surprised by that, by how heavy. I mean, I've carried the Torah a lot of times,
Yeah, but it's hard to
but
do
not
both.
open and hold it, you know, and it's a little, the scroll is actually a little loose on the,
I will never do Hagba when it's on Genesis or Deuteronomy because it's just too weighted towards one side.
yeah, it's uneven, yeah.
Right.
So,
So in the middle of the year, it's pretty easy.
yeah,
yeah.
it's like holding up you know, a videotape when it's either at the beginning or at the very
Yeah.
end. It's all
I mean, I do think with the Torah poem too, it's, you know, I'm kind of juxtaposing modern life and this ancient ritual. But I wouldn't say it's loss.
well, okay, maybe loss isn't the right. I'm certainly with your grandmother's recipe. I mean
Yeah, well, it's definitely there.
Yeah.
But that's personal loss. It's not really loss of Jewishness. But I do say in the Torah poem that, you know, I'm one of the few people in our family that practices Judaism.
Right.
So, you know, that's probably where you got that, and that's accurate. So for that part of the poem.
I've never raised the Torah in my life.
Well, practice and go to the gym
Well,
before you do.
I mean, I've been called to the Torah. I've had Aliyahs, you know, dozens of times.
Like I said, it's not that bad in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Who does it normally? I mean, when you're called up for an Aliyah, you don't do it.
No, but
yeah.
it's an honor, like an aliyah is an honor.
Okay.
So, or the rabbi does it.
Right.
So, but it is an honor that a congregant can do, for example.
Okay.
If
So,
you
I mean,
attend
that's
a
why I was asked to
if
do
you
it,
attend
not,
a very small congregation, you'll probably have to do it more often.
yeah. So this was I have a couple of cousins that are like sisters to me. And so it was the daughter, you know, of one of those cousins. So it was an honor, a special honor for me.
So you do this instead of going to the gym, or you go to the gym in order to be able to do this better?
I go to the gym in order to live to Methuselah's age.
Oh, okay.
And a byproduct is being able to lift the Torah.
Oh, okay. And that's why you cut out the bathtub gym.
It's what you know, humanities people would call an epiphenomenon.
I'm not humanities. I'm a social scientist.
Keep going
I
with
was
that.
just talking to Jarrod.
Ah, all right.
I don't
So
use the word epiphenomenon.
are we going to get to hear you play the ukulele?
Yeah, we're running out of time here.
Yeah, you know, I will do it, but only if you give me veto power about including it, because I'm super out of practice.
All right, that's
All
fine.
right, okay.
Fine. Well, you have veto over Adam's mustard poem too, if you...
Who am I to, you know, veto a work of art like that?
Right.
Everybody's got to start somewhere, even if it's Potemta mustard.
You missed my poem because you turned your screen off for a minute.
Well, you can read it after this. So
I'll just say it quickly. There once was a Jew called Woke, who was really not much more than a joke. He joined JVP to set Muslims free and ended up serving the folk.
Oh, very good.
And nobody published it.
You know, let's see. There once was a man from Orleans who invented a blank machine. Okay, I'm stopping there.
And did you see my rewriting of Rocky Raccoon? You know, the Beatles.
Yeah.
Her name was McGill.
I'll never forget the look on her face. Their baby brother. I can't. I'm just too out of practice.
That's all right. Do I need to cut this out, or can we just keep it in?
Yeah. I'm just a 6-foot rat snake, climbing up a red oak tree, minding my own business. Fuck, take that out, please. In my own business, why don't you? Why don't you set? Why don't you? I don't even remember my own song.
I'm not going to be able to edit just like 0.7 seconds of a song. That's going to be a little bit challenging.
Well, okay. I'm just a
You're allowed to swear on
rat snake, climbing up a red oak tree, minding my own business, minding my own business. Why don't you let me be? I'm looking for some birdies, make the nicest treats. Like them when they're in the nest, I can hear. Ah, shit. I'm sorry. I should have practiced. I
Start
thought you were
smashing
trying
things
to.
like that piano player on Sesame Street that they had to cancel because it promoted violence among kids. Remember him, Adam?
Which one?
The piano player on Sesame Street. I forget what his name was, but every time he
No, that
started
was
playing this.
the Muppet Show.
No, I think it was Sesame Street. Every time he started playing something, it was like, oh no, I can't do it. And he started banging, everything. I can't remember what his name was. Do you remember him, Gary?
Oh, you mean
No,
Don Music?
Sesame Street is like I was in graduate school.
You mean Don Music?
Don Music. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, him, and they had to cut that out. Cookie Monster had to start eating vegetables, and Big Bird could no longer be the only person seeing Snuffleupagus because it suggested he was hallucinating things, which was unhealthy. So, it either was making light of schizophrenia, or perhaps it was encouraging kids to drop acid. In any case, yeah, they changed Sesame Streets, for all that.
So I will say one thing, and that is, here's my graphic memoir.
Oh, cool.
Here are what the pages look like. To my knowledge, at least in English, it's the only memoir that's in graphic novel format. And it does have a whole section of, what Judaism has meant to me.
Hold on, it's a novel or it's a memoir?
No, it's a memoir.
Okay, I've read other memoirs that are graphic novels.
Of a scientist,
No. There's one actually of a 2G, a Holocaust survivor's child. What was her name? Beatrice. I used it in my paper that I wrote on Holocaust humor. It's quite fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, graphic novels are the big thing now, and have been for really ever since Art Spiegelman's Mouse. But now they're in the exponential growth phase. But no, the uniqueness of this is that it's a memoir of the life and career of a scientist in graphic format.
Oh, okay, cool.
Did you draw your artwork?
No, I had to pay somebody to do that. You saw my art is limited to lines and
you could have been a marine biologist. Memoirs of marine biologists.
Well, that's kind of what this is.
The sea was angry that day, my friends, and just had the ocean. We could draw a whale. We could all draw a whale. That's not so hard.
We should title this, does anyone here know a marine biologist?
Well, I started out in marine systems, so.
And you pretended to be an architect, right?
An architect? I'm missing something.
These are all Seinfeld references.
Okay.
You know how George has always wanted to pretend to be an architect.
I hate Seinfeld.
What?
I'm like the only Jewish person.
Oh my God.
Who hates Seinfeld. Nothing ever happens. Come on.
It's nothing. Yeah.
I hate those shows where people they're kind of, they cannot escape their own incompetence and their own bad habits. And that's all Seinfeld is.
Well, that's most sitcoms, first of all.
Well, that's true as well.
I mean, did you watch Gilligan's Island? I mean, they couldn't get off the damn island.
That's true, but I was 8 when I enjoyed that show, and so da 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 da. I still, if I went deep into memory, I probably could come up with some of the words.
Hold on, it's mathematically impossible for you to have been 8 when Gilligan's Island was on, but in grad school when Sesame Street was on.
Yeah, but Sesame Street was for little kids. I mean, it was like, I might have been 8 when that show, or 9 or 10 was running, but it was for little kids. It wasn't for 9-year-olds.
That's believable. That was in the 70s that show started.
Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so see, I mean, I started college in 1971.
Mm. The Gilligan's Island was late six, isn't it late 60s?
I think mid-60s, actually.
Really? That early?
Well, Mr. Google will tell us, whoever's quickest on the keyboard.
Yeah, the show was a little bit redundant, to put it mildly. Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island ran from 90 episodes. Pilot was 1963.
Yeah,
In 64, look at that. Huh.
mid-60s. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was 10
Mm.
in 1964. So,
Did you ever sing Adon Olam to the tune of Gilligan's Island?
no,
How
but I
many,
don't
where
know
did I
all the
see that?
words.
I saw that recently. Where was that?
Well, Adon Olam could be sung to a variety of different tunes.
Maybe it wasn't O'Donnell.
Gilligan's Island is one of them.
Huh.
I'm trying to think if I of a tale of There's Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire and his wife, and
movie star.
the professor and Mary Ann.
But in the first season, they just said, and the rest.
I actually have. So when we left Rochester, we moved to Los Angeles and lived in kind of a ritzy neighborhood. And I have Russell Johnson, who was the professor. I have his autograph.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was in a couple of awesome Twilight Zone episodes, or at least one.
I have Rod Serling's autograph as well. He came and spoke at our temple.
Wow. He was Jewish. No, most people don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we seem to have gone far afield here from our original topic.
That was fun.
It's just like the Twilight Zone episode where, the person wakes up and everyone else is different, but he's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how I feel right now. I mean, in this JVP, anti-Semitism, I mean, I feel like the world has somehow changed, and I don't understand how it happened.
Yeah, well, the question is, the Jewish anti-Zionists, where did they come from? How long have they been here? And I had a grad student who wrote a great paper comparing anti-Zionism before the founding of Israel to afterwards. And beforehand, it was a legitimate topic of debates. They raised the actual issues. And then afterwards, it all becomes, entangled in these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I went to Berkeley, it was there, but I did not spend any time hanging out with the Jewish studies people. I knew they were a problem. I had one unpleasant conversation with Daniel Boyarin, I believe, and I hung out with the Russian historians. And since I did Russian Jewish history.
So you were in the history department?
I was,
yeah.
Yeah, which was a terrific department, and Russian history is apolitical. It has been since the Cold War has ended. Even today with the war on Ukraine, I was reading applications for a search committee last year I was on. I just couldn't believe how they're doing great, fantastic work, and they haven't become all polemical because of the war in Ukraine. Jewish studies has a lot to learn from these guys, a lot to learn.
Well, I just did my last 2 years at Berkeley, so it was 73 to 75, and it was incredible. I mean,
I loved it there. Absolutely loved it.
It was the people in New Orleans say this. They say, it doesn't matter where you came from, you grew up in New Orleans. And that's what I say about Berkeley. I mean, it was a fantastic time, and my eyes, started out being like this and ended up like that.
The biking, the cafes, the food.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to live there again. Yeah, couldn't afford it.
It was where I had my first cafe latte in 1973, and it cost me $1.35.
They weren't much more expensive in the late 90s. They really weren't. So you could still get it for about $2 or so. Cafe Strata, Cafe Milano. I don't know if they were around in your day.
I don't remember either of those. Was the Med still around?
Which one?
On telly, the Med, the Mediterranean?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, it was by like Cody's books and
Yeah, I remember Cody's books. Yeah.
No, I always lived on North Side, so you know, we would go to places. Pete's was founded there, and a place called the Three C's. We used to have breakfast very regularly.
I don't
So
think that was still there. I didn't spend
No,
so much time on that side. Unless
North Side at that point was you know, South Campus and Telly was, you know, full of panhandlers and
oh, it
people.
still is. Yeah.
Yeah, and drug dealers, and the Med used to have a sign, no drug dealers allowed, but that never stopped them. But Northside was a little more genteel, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to walk up the hill to get there. So.
well, I don't know if our viewers are going to be that interested in this tangent.
Okay. Well, we will. Yeah. You know, I mean, well, if they stuck around for the Gilligan's Island part, then anything's possible.
True.
I expect drastic editing myself.
No, we're just gonna. I suspect there'll be very little, which is fine. You know, people can always shut off if they don't want to watch the end of it.
Okay, all right. Well, they saw my successful talents and my failure on the ukulele as
That's
well.
fine.
I can live with that.
Yeah, we got
I
to
heard my
read
poem.
Yeah, we got to read our poetry, and we
That's
still
right.
touched on important Jewish issues. So
Right.
this has been a terrific episode, and are certainly the one that's gone most far afield. I think the most far afield since I did one of my Seinfeld Talmud book, which was episode number 2. So we're gonna sign off now, and I'm Jarrod, and that's Adam, and that's Gary, and let's all.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's really been fun.
Absolutely.
Take care.
All right, have a good week.
Good night.